Hello and welcome to first ever OT related video of Parisa Tech YouTube channel. Today we'll be talking about IT versus OT and also why IT security is not applicable in OT security, as well as some real life examples. The first thing that you need to understand in IT versus OT, or information technology versus operational technology, is their purpose. The purpose of IT is data processing and management, while as in OT, the purpose is controlling physical data and physical processes and machinery, either using hardware or software. And then priority is different. If you have been working in IT side, you are probably familiar with CIA triad, which is confidentiality, integrity, availability. And on IT side, we all know that confidentiality is the main thing. However, in OT side, availability is the main point. Imagine you're going to a class and your bus is late or your train is late. And the main reason is you check it online and it says they're patching it. And it's a patch Tuesday for them. And if you're like me, if you have an 8:30 a.m. class, you do not like that. And you want to go there and get there on time. And the other difference is architecture. The architecture of IT is standardized, an interconnected data network, while as an architecture in OT is specialized, deterministic field devices, and industrial control systems. We're going to get into CIA triad and details in a bit. The biggest difference between IT information technology and OT operational technology is in their priorities. We all know, if you have worked or are familiar with the IT side, CIA triad is something that we all base our policies and standards and make it based on that. So CIA confidentiality, integrity, and availability is always on top of things for IT. However, on OT side, it's a little bit different. So for OT, the first thing that we want to make sure that people are safe. So if there's an attacker trying to override the code in your computer and your engineering workstation and trying to cause an overflow of water tanks, we want to make sure that is not causing a flood and is not putting people's safety in danger. So that is the reason that we want to make sure that safety is our priority. The second thing is reliability. The example that I mentioned earlier, you want to make sure that your train or SkyTrain or underground train is always reliable. And you don't want it to be someday you go to SkyTrain and it's not running because it's patching and it's not even scheduled. And they're just saying it's patch Tuesday, you should have expected that. And also availability. How would you feel if you have a 8:30 a.m. class, again, example that I mentioned earlier, and you are having the issue not able to getting a train because it's not available and they're working on it? I wouldn't like that personally, so I'm assuming it's the same. But then again, if you talk to a lot of engineers and you talk to a lot of people who have worked in OT side in previous years, probably a decade ago, they would say, we air gap the system. And which means technically air gapping means that you put it aside, you don't connect it to the internet, you don't connect it to anything, and it will be fine. Well, hoping that it will be fine. However, nowadays, with OT devices getting integrated to IT systems and also cloud, the air gap is a legacy concept. The air gap does not exist anymore. And vulnerabilities in IT business networks now can come and pivot into the OT or operational technology side. So we're going to talk about why IT security fails in operational technology systems. And as we know, a lot of legacy OT devices or operational technology devices were never designed to handle unpredictable network interrogations. They were built and secure by design. And a lot of active scanning tools like Nmap can cause instability. And one of the examples is in August 2006, the Browns Ferry 3 nuclear plant was forced to manually shut down a reactor. And one of the main reasons that they figured it out was because the dual redundant PLCs was there. And also, we're going to talk about in more details about this. However, what I noticed or what I discussed with some people and professional, what is happening lately is they are building PLCs or OT devices that are capable of running and being stable while active scanning. However, it is highly recommended to have these active scannings or these testing in not in production mode, but in testing mode. And we can talk more about this later. So we all have heard about Stuxnet and Florida water poisoning incident and a lot of other incidents that happen into the OT world in the past 10, 20 years ago. However, what I would like to highlight here is the attack that happened to Taiwan's higher speed rail network. And basically, what happened, the student, it was a 23 years old student, university student, that targeted Taiwan's high speed rail network by intercepting trans-European trunk radio parameter, and they had not been rotated for 19 years. And you might think that in IT we just like life cycle is 5 years and we always change things. However, in OT it is different. A lot of devices and a lot of systems have not been rotated in 19 years. And he used software-defined radio and could program his own handheld radio to impersonate legitimate railway beacons. This incident happened last month in May of 2026, and the result or the impact was four trains stopped at the same time simultaneously, and there was a 48 minutes network-wide delay. So was performed exactly as it was designed, and the only thing was the attacker weaponized the OT safety protocol against itself. So now they know how it works. Now imagine if same thing happens in hospitals. People's lives are in line. The other incident that I'd like to go over is the architecture and attack flow of Trident or Trices attack. I like to talk about this one because this one shows how attackers pivoted from IT side to OT side and shows the importance of IT integration with OT and why it is important to understand both sides and their security. So it was attacked in 2017 and they targeted Schneider Electric Triconic safety instrumented systems at Saudi Arabian petrochemical plant. And the attackers compromised corporate IT network first and then went to the OT side. And it was like a spear phishing. They had valid credential and they had remote access. And also, what they did was they took over engineering workstation and exploited the tri-station protocol on port 1502 or 1502, which lacked robust authentication by design. So it was insecure by design. And then if you could reach the controller from the engineering workstation, it automatically trusted you. So there was no password required. So what they did was they reverse engineered the proprietary tri-station protocol to communicate directly with the Triconics controller, and then they injected the malicious ladder logic into the controller. So they changed the code to override core safety functions, and then they modified the data packets that was sent to HMI or human machine interface so operators saw false safe and they wouldn't suspect anything. So what was happening here that it was that on system on the operator system everything was right, but on the real life side there was things happening. There was physical systems being impacted. In HMI or human machine interface, displayed fabricated readings like all systems was normal, pressure was stable, and also operators had zero visibility of what is happening. And it was only caught because of a flaw in the malware that triggered redundant failsafe and shut down the plan. So we can see that it was happening in 2017, and now with AI and the knowledge that the attacker have right now, they can attack us, and they know the system better now. They can attack us without even those flaws. So it is important that we understand and we need to um, be more vigilant and smarter than the attackers. So this was the digital illusion. What the operator could see was everything was fine, but in reality, everything was not fine. Physical systems were being impacted. And most of the times, the attacker acts as a man in the middle. And it's similar to IT attacks. They send a malicious code to failed equipment and falsify status reports, so operator console cannot show any of that. Another important thing that we should know is how to secure operational technology devices. And if you're not familiar with Purdue model, it is a reference model for network design or network diagrams for OT devices, which level 4 and 5 is enterprise security zone, and then we have industrial demilitarized zone and industrial security zone, and then we have cell or area zones, which we have our physical processes or PLCs. And it's important that in our demilitarized zone or industrial control system demilitarized zones, we have passive monitoring sensors and also a jump box with MFA set up on it. So we want to make sure that visibility is safe. If attackers cannot see it or cannot reach it, they cannot attack it. And this provides protocol where network visibility without injecting active packets into fragile physical processes. And of course, how we monitor things also matters. So in active network probing, for example, in MAP, as I mentioned earlier, it might make the devices, OT devices, unstable. And the mechanism for active network probing is that it injects traffic, queries device directly for firmware or configs. And in OT reality, guess what's going to happen? Most of the time, especially for older OT devices, your system will crash. And we don't want that to happen. And this introduces unexpected traffic load, which causes device instability, process interference, and crashes, for example, Brown Ferry. And it's only safe during planned plant outages, or if it's like a system that we already know that it is capable of active scanning. And one thing that we talk about a lot is passive network scanning. What it does is inspect existing traffic passing through switches, it listens, and learns the baseline. In OT reality, it is safe. It injects zero traffic, it already knows the assets, it is clear text protocol and behavioral anomalies without touching the fragile endpoints. And another important thing is that you have to make sure that you understand how to secure your credentials and also know what are your assets. So if you don't know something exists, if you don't know there is a tank with HMI or human machine interface, which is the screen that you technically will control it with, exists in your fourth floor of your building, how are you going to secure it from attackers? So the most important thing is to know what you have and secure it then. Another thing that I'd like to focus on is that scores do not equal risk, especially in operational technology. If you work in IT side or study in cybersecurity and IT side with focus on information technology, you have heard of CVSS scores. That's where we find vulnerabilities and patch them against them. And that is risk-based patching versus CVSS trap. That is where when it comes in. And 98% of security adversaries lack practical OT mitigation. And that is why most field-based equipment is insecure by design, which means bottom-level protocol issues aren't even worthy of CVEs. And if you can see here, total vulnerability is there, and there is your specific hardware, and it's actionable in OT. So it's important that you avoid patching based on CV assist score and focus on these if your hardware or if your devices um, internet phase. You should focus on internet exposure, network segmentation, and critical physical processes. You have to understand how your system works to be able to secure it. So by now we all know what is good and what is not good and what to do and what not to do. But it's all useless if we do not know how to speak the language. Bridging the gap between IT and OT requires a shared language. And we will stop crashing the plant when we build a shared language. And the integration of IT security tools into OT is only and only successful when the tools respect the physical laws of industrial environment. So we need to understand how the system works before telling the people to patch it. So for example, if there is a device, for example, a SkyTrain, and we don't know that it has a specific key on it, a specific interface on it that is vulnerable, how are we going to secure it? So it's important to understand and know how the system works before patching it or before advising people on how to patch it. And it is important that we know the framework for vulnerability management for OT devices as well. The Dragos framework categorizes patching for OT devices into now, next, and never. So it is important that you audit and disable default credentials. So you want to make sure that you don't have admin for your devices or OT devices or software have password, you audit them, and you look for public internet facing, for example, Modbus or TCP devices. What is out there? What vulnerabilities are out there? And then you patch it based on that. And then the next step is build a Purdue level 3.5 ICS DMZ or demilitarized zone that we talked about earlier. Have passive scanning implemented and also have a jump box with MFA on it. And deploy passive network monitoring via span ports. And I had somebody ask me that we might not have enough time for a MFA or multi-factor authentication. There's like people's life on the line and we don't want to look into the app. And that is totally true and that is totally fair. What we want to have multi-factor authentication can be anything. So if you're there physically, your fingerprint, your password, your email, everything by itself is a multi-factor authentication. So just making sure you don't leave it admin, and also make sure that you have multi-factor authentication enabled. And there are also hard rules. Never run active IT vulnerability scanners on live production environments. And this is in red, and because it's important, and we don't want to have SkyTrain or train or our electricity systems stops all of a sudden because they are running a scanning or Nmap scanning. And then never bridge the corporate network directly to the plant floor. You always want to have demilitarized zone. You always want to have a metal security wall between them. And triage requires specific rules. And we talked about this, and we are going to talk about this more in detail if needed. And one of the questions that usually we get is why not just put an antivirus software? Why not just like patch it to the latest system? Why not just update the Windows to Windows 11? So one of the main issues is that um, a lot of these devices are not compatible with the latest antiviruses, so they might affect their um, how they function. And also, the softwares that are supporting the hardware might not even be compatible with latest version of Windows or other operating systems. So a lot of them are running on very, very old operating systems. And here's why we adopt the SANS ICS-5 critical controls, which include incident response plan, defensible architecture, network visibility and monitoring, secure remote access, and risk-based vulnerability management. And the system goal is outcome-focused, intelligence-driven holistic protection design specifically for physical implications and OT environments. So it's always important to have a incident response plan and know who to contact when things happen, what to do, who's going to be the scribe, who's going to be the commander. It's always important. And moving on to control number two, defensible architecture, it's always important to have ICS-DMZ. And the main reason that it's repeated multiple times during this video is because it is important, very important. The first thing that you might want to do is establish segmentation policies between IT and OT. The other thing is complete collection management framework for crown jewels. And for those of you who don't know what collection management framework is, it is a structured inventory of all data sources available within a network, which it documents exactly what data is being logged, where the data is stored, how long it is retained, and who's responsible for managing it. And operational and OT side or OT environment, defenders use this framework during an incident to immediately know what forensic evidence is available to investigate an anomaly instead of wasting time searching for logs. So it's important to know what your assets are and what is important to your business. What is your crown jewels? And also then find the known threat scenarios and then correlate them with your collection management framework. So as I mentioned, it's important to know what you have, and visibility accelerates response. So how can you secure something that you don't know it exists? How can you secure something that you don't know how it works? So network visibility monitoring is very, very important. And as we mentioned earlier, have sensor deployment and to monitor east-west traffic for crown jewel assets, and with time to perform cause analysis, remediation, and mitigation. When you know what your assets are, you know what to do, you have a good network visibility, you have a very good incident response, guess how long it's going to take to find the root cause and do remediation? It's 15 hours in operational technology, which is a lot of time. Because imagine if the Taiwan speed rail um, stopped for 48 minutes, and that was a big deal because what if there was someone there and got a heart attack and they couldn't get up? Imagine that for 15 hours. Imagine someone hack into your systems and remote into your systems just because your password and username or credentials are admin. So it's important that we secure our remote access as well. And we can do that by making sure that all external connections are funneled through monitored checkpoints. So we want jump hosts with MFA to be in our demilitarized zone. We also want the connections, secure remote connections or remote access connections turn off by default. And it's only enabled on demand. So I don't want somebody from finance or HR or help desk to be logging in or remote into my engineering workstation and play around with my code in PLC or ladder logic. And it's also important that time and region limitation are strictly enforced. And the reason being is if somebody remote in from, for example, somewhere in Asia, that might be a suspicious thing, and we don't want that to happen, or even Europe. And capability to quickly disconnect with zero physical OT impact is the most important one, and that is why it is highlighted. So we want to make sure if there is something happens, somebody remote in, for example, somebody got attacked and is a victim of social engineering, and mid conversation they notice that this is happening, There should be a capability in the system to quickly disconnect the call or remote access without our system getting affected, without our physical system getting impacted. So we need to understand that patching requires operational realities. When we identify a vulnerability, does it affect our industrial control systems? If it's yes, then we will see if there's a workaround available. If it doesn't, we will document it and continue to our day. If there's a workaround available, we will schedule it for routine patch, but if not, we will see if the operational need exceeds the risk. If it's yes, we will schedule it and patch it, but if not, we'll patch it immediately, which this combines the now, next, never intelligence with the operational realities to prevent patching-induced downtime. And I am going to leave you with this. We cannot copy paste IT security into an operational world. The adversaries understand the physics of our plan better than ever. They know how the system works. It is time we build security that respects those physics. And we speak the same language. We speak the shared language, and cybersecurity is responsibility of everyone. And we need to make sure that everybody is accountable and responsible for the security of our systems, whether it be vendors or people who are working on policies or operators. Cybersecurity is a shared responsibility, so protect the process and safeguard the civilization. And feel free to put any questions or send me a message if you would like to discuss something or have any questions. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn if you would like and send me your questions and comments and feedbacks. Thank you.